chicken. I'm your guy.
Blinking.
I'll have what Joseph's has.
Look, somebody's talking about you.
This is what we call the voice of God.
Popping.
Everybody just gets to focus on you.
Grab me.
Probably not the best thing for an introvert.
I'm asking for you.
Well, I like a good chicken sandwich.
Touch me. Hi, David. Comment.
Oh my God.
Like.
You're actually an identical twin.
Push.
Maybe I'll just ask Julie to talk about what it is to be
No.
an identical twin.
Pick me up.
No, you didn't.
Shouting.
Surprise! Jeremiah, just hang on a second. I just got a text.
There's an edit for your new opening, Joseph.
I feel really honored to have been here, man.
By the way, you've done a masterful job. Seriously.
It was such a joy.
Thanks, Joseph. It's an honor.
Good on you. This was a pleasure.
I mean, you are the prime example of how to pivot in this new environment.
I wish everybody gets an opportunity to interact with Joseph Jaffe and Corona TV.
Who needs Cameo when I've got my own personal Cameo? Thursday, September 24th, and welcome to Corona TV, everybody. I hope you are thirsty because it's actually CoronaCocktails. I hope you're hungry because today we're talking about cookies with a cause, cookies for a cause. We have a little bit for everyone today. Something that I actually want to remind you guys that we have a fantastic after show. The after show begins immediately after this show, hence the word after show. And you have an opportunity to interact with my guest today, and you'll find out more about him in a moment. So what happens is the audience, the people formerly known as the audience, which I owe Steve Garfield for that. Thanks, Steve. I'm glad you liked the opening. And I was just trying to incarnate you, right? The people formerly known as the audience. So stick around for that because it's going to be fun. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what we have in store for you today. Well, first of all, we need to celebrate. Let's celebrate. What are we celebrating? We're celebrating our National Day. And today we're celebrating Happy National Punctuation Day, as opposed to let's eat Christy or let's eat Christy. And, I have a pet peeve. And my pet peeve is this. So I'm going to wear the cap today. It is, you're not going to believe this. No. How do I get my finger? Oh, there you go. You're not going to believe this. I don't care what people are saying. I don't care if they've been through marriage, death, divorce, they've been laid off, they got promoted. If you say you're not going to believe this, I just, had a heart attack, I'm going to say you're. And then I'm going to say, I hope you're okay. I'm sorry, but that is my pet peeve. And you're just going to have to deal with it. It's not that bad. All right. So rant aside, let's relax because you are going to be entertained, engaged, enthralled, and the most important word, inspired by Kuda Biza. He is is he a serial entrepreneur. He's also co-founder and CMO of Nunbelievable. And you're going to find out more about his conscious capitalism company of cookies soon enough. So let's do birthdays. Tom Biro, PR professional. Happy birthday to you. Francesco Peruna Jr., that beautiful song you hear when Corona TV begins, Frank wrote that. Frank performed that. Frank has actually performed that song on Corona TV before. It's one of my favorite songs. It might be actually one of my all-time favorite songs because it was born like Corona TV in COVID. And let's just say a few happy birthdays as well on LinkedIn. Jordan Broad, Patrick Burns, Leilani, I cannot even pronounce her last name, Natalia. Happy birthday to you guys. Well, let's get into our seated soliloquy. There are going to be a lot of alliterations, onomatopoeia, entendres, solipses. I'm not even sure I know what that is. But today's seated soliloquy is called Conscious Consciousness. Say it with me, people. Conscious You see, I'm going to mix it up, but you'll see why in a moment. Actually, what I really want to talk to you about is the evolution of capitalism, which has been, I think, a common theme and a focus area on Corona TV. And the good thing is that it continues to gain momentum. And while there are those who confuse conscious capitalism with socialism, It's far from it. In the past week on the show, we've heard from ex-Kodak CMO Jeffrey Hazlett, who challenged brands to pick a side. Today, I'm talking to the co-founder of mission-based, socially conscious baked goods company, Nunbelievable. It was Whole Foods founder John Mackey who actually coined the phrase conscious capitalism, or if he didn't, he just wrote a book on it, which is actually good enough for me. Mackey actually sits on the board of Conscious Capitalism, Inc., which according to their website is about elevating humanity through business by leveling up business operations to collectively demonstrate capitalism as a powerful force for good when practiced consciously. Now, note to self, I need to get on Alexander McCoben, who is their CEO on Corona TV, and actually I need to get on John Mackey as well. So if you know either of them, send them my way, please. The idea of capitalism being a catalyst for, or a force for good is a strong ideal, and the decision to commit to the execution and fulfillment of this is a conscious one. But then it struck me, I've often mixed up like a tongue twister the words conscious with the word conscience. I mean, it is National Punctuation Day and all. But in this case, it isn't as much a Freudian slip, as much as it is a very explicit acknowledgement that this isn't just the right thing to do, it's the only thing to do. Acting consciously to elevate humanity, to give back, to provide a meal to those in need, one handcrafted cookie at a time, is ultimately about listening to your conscience. This is what we were put on earth to do. This is how we should be spending our God-given talents. This is how we have the ability to transcend the din of political squabbling and infighting, cope with the harshness and hardships of life, find meaning and our red threads. And guess what? We can still make money as a result, a lot of it. Well, now it's time to bring on my guest, Kuda Biza. And let me give him a little bit more of the screen as I introduce him. Kuda is a serial entrepreneur who started his first company when he was 9 years old in Zimbabwe. He moved to the US with only $40 in his pocket to study at Lynn University, where he started his second company. Kuda then spent over a decade in various roles at a Fortune 500 company responsible for launching multi-million-dollar strategic new growth initiatives. Currently, he's the co-founder and CMO of Nunbelievable, a socially conscious baked goods company that donates meals for every box of cookies sold. Kuda also has built six businesses and a nonprofit. I mean, you know, when somebody says the word serial entrepreneur, you probably think, oh, you know, they've started 2 or 3 companies. This guy, I think you can tell, is a serial entrepreneur. Now watch this.
Hello, I'm Kuda Biza, co-founder and chief marketing officer for Nunbelievable. Today is Valentine's Day, and we've decided to partner up with New York City Relief to feed some homeless people at the Salvation Army headquarters in New York City. In America, there's a huge hunger crisis. More than 40 million people are food insecure. So what we've decided to do as a brand is to come and help end hunger in a delicious way with our cookies. Nunbelievable is a mission-based baked goods company. For every box of cookies that we sell, we donate meals. Our goal is to donate 1 million meals by the end of 2022. It's part of our DNA as a brand to actually be, on the front lines in impacting the people that we serve. As a cookie company, we believe that we're more than just, a transactional relationship. We actually want to invest our time in loving, in serving these people. And we've started to open up the doors for our customers to join us. Customers who are supporting the mission not only get to do that through their purchase, but they can also do that by coming and really connecting and impacting the people that we serve.
That was Nunbelievable. Welcome to the show, Kuda.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so privileged and honored to be on Corona TV.
And it's Corona cocktails time, so I think it's time to fill your glass. What are you drinking?
I'm about to find out. I gave my wife the unique, task to create my beverage for this show. So
It better not be coffee.
no, I don't drink coffee, by the way. So let's find out. It's some yumminess there.
You're not going to divulge what it is? Is it Amarula? Is it Kahlua?
It is. So it's Amarula. For those of you from Southern Africa, you've probably seen it. And she mixed it up with something else, but it's a nice, delicious cocktail for Corona TV cocktail today.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, cheers to you, my friend.
Cheers to you, Joe.
Well, we just found out a fun fact. We know 2 fun facts about you. I'm going to come back to the second fun fact, which is that you arrived in the US with $40 in your pocket. But we found out you don't drink coffee, and of course, I know a couple more fun facts about you. So, are you ready to spill the beans and share these fun facts, whether you like it or not?
Well, yeah, it depends which ones. There are some that kept within friends, and then others that we can share. So, which one should I share today?
Well, I've chosen 2. The first one is this one, which is on the first day of school, you were attacked by a blind dog.
Yeah. So think about it. Your first day of first grade, you're all suited up in your uniform. You're going to school, and right when I got at the school gate, literally like at the school gate, this random blind dog just came out of nowhere and just kind of like ran me over and attacked me. And I went to class, my very first class, all dirty, with a nice leaking knee wound. So that's my memory of my first day of first grade.
And by the way, do you like the Photoshop with the eye patch on the dog? The poor dog.
I did see that. I was like, is that dog a pirate dog that was on sea and lost its eye?
So you have to be pretty bad, a pretty poor runner, I think, if you can't outrun a blind dog. But I'm going to give you a pass because you were young. It was your first day of school. We'll move on to your second fun fact, which is not an embarrassing fact, but it is an interesting one, which is one of your many businesses that you launched in Saudi Arabia. You actually ended up having to, well, first of all, it's an interesting fact that you launched a business in Saudi Arabia and you actually had to learn Arabic for that.
That is true. So there's a backstory to it, like everything, right? So I was actually in Guatemala visiting one of my friends, and I'm just walking across Guatemala and I'm seeing all of these like bracelets from this brand. I see it everywhere. So I say to my friend, hey, wouldn't this be cool if we could sell them in the US? And I was in Guatemala for about 10 days. So I put my friend to find out the CEO. He made some calls. We found her. And I went over and I was like, hey, I'm going to go back to America. I would love to distribute your bracelets in the US. And she was like, I just signed a distribution deal with someone. So the US is gone. I was like, okay, what about Canada? She was like, Canada too. I'm like, okay, what about the UK? And she was like, the UK as well. And I'm like, okay, so where can I take your bracelets? She was like, well, the only left territories now, it's Africa and the Middle East. And I was like, I'll figure something out. So I bought 400 bracelets on the spot, came back to the US. My intern at the time, Shadi Homes, he was from Saudi Arabia. And I get back to the US and I said, like, hey, Shadi, I have 400 bracelets. Do you think we can sell these in Saudi Arabia? And he was like, hold your beer. We'll figure out a plan. And Shadi actually ended up quitting, moved back to Saudi Arabia, and him and I partnered up and we launched Wakami Arabia in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. So, we launched it. We started by just selling at flea markets in Saudi Arabia. They call them bazaars. And we eventually actually ended up having a store, like a brick and mortar store in the biggest mall in Saudi Arabia. So we brought in other business partners. So I had to learn Arabic in order to, like, talk and, seem cultured. But that was a nice ride.
Okay, so if I say salam alaikum,
yep,
then you would reply.
You would say kif haluk. Usually that's how you'd say hi, but salam alaikum, it's more like a religious type of greeting.
And then alaikum salam. Or
exactly.
Wait. Well, how about I speak to you in Hebrew, you speak to me in Arabic, and we can basically solve the Middle East peace, the whole conflict in just one cocktail.
So I have one for you. Bidi ashrab.
Gesundheit.
Bidi ashrab means would you like a drink? So since
yes.
On Corona cocktail, I think that's a more appropriate Arabic phrase for you.
Oh, should we start it again? Welcome to Corona Bidi Ashrab. So Kuda, I mean, in just hearing your story, and we'll talk about where we met in a moment, it seems like your entire life is just an adventure. I mean, it's a journey and it's an adventure. And when opportunities presented themselves to you, you just took them. You're like, I've got bracelets. Where do I sell them? Oh, this isn't available. Let me go there. But according to your bio, your first business was started at the age of 9. So what was that business? But more importantly, what is that spark inside you? What is the magic inside you that has made you just want to create and be your own boss and go down this incredible path of that we call entrepreneurship? Yeah, so I started on the path of entrepreneurship by pure accident. So what happened when I was 9 was it was a hot summer day and I could hear the ice cream truck rolling down my street. And I ran into the house to ask my mom for $1 to get an ice cream. And she said no. And for me, it was kind of like frustrating because I was like, oh my God, like she literally controls my ice cream destiny. So in order for me to have an ice cream, my mom has to be on board with that. So it didn't really sit well with me. So that day I noticed that my neighbor's windows were dirty. So I went into the house, I took a bucket and I grabbed my mother's supply, right, to put a little bit of revenge there. And I went to my neighbor and I asked if I could clean her windows. And she said, yeah. And then 3 hours later, I earned $5, which to me was 5 days of ice cream. And, that's how I started my window cleaning business. So I spent the entire summer washing windows in my neighborhood and made really good money. But I was able to then realize that if you are able to solve someone's problem, you're rewarded. So I was like, okay, I love this. So I'm going to be an entrepreneur. Let's just figure out problems and I come up with solutions, and I got hooked. And I loved the liberating power of being an entrepreneur because, once you've created something, the equation changes. Because when I was 9, 2 of my friends started actually working for me. So I would go do the sell and these guys would wash the windows. So I was able to then see like, hey, there's some sort of hierarchy ladder here where you can get other people to do the work, still make money. So it really got me into entrepreneurship. I think they call that delegation, which then leads, well, that's management, right? Intro to management. And then you've got this idea of global expansion and franchising. So how the hell did you learn all of these fundamentals of business at the age of 9? Because you know what, on one hand, Kuda, you could just say, surely every kid should learn this or would learn this or would follow the path, but yet not every kid does. And quite frankly, most adults aren't even able to do that. Yeah, were you in Zimbabwe or South Africa at the time, by the way, at the age of 9? I was in Zimbabwe. I was in Harare. I think fundamentally, and this is just my opinion, I think the education system is actually set up so that, they build good managers, right? Like in school, you're not taught how to create or start your own business and things like that. They teach you how to remember things, memorize things, and be a good manager. So because I was always dabbling in entrepreneurship,
when I was a kid in Zimbabwe, and then even when I was in college, I was able to then just have just a different DNA because I see things differently, and I was always outside of my comfort zone, right? And then that's a key thing if you're going to be an entrepreneur. You can't expect to be an entrepreneur but always be in your comfort zone. So for me, it was a really good distinguisher in building the traits I needed to be able to create more businesses, right? My risk profile is different than a lot of people. A lot of people wouldn't be in Guatemala and just on the spot in 2 seconds decide to buy 400 bracelets, not knowing how they're going to sell them,
And I have to tell you that so we met, you were my client, and my company was doing some work for Jordan, which was the company you worked for, down in Boca.
Yes.
And
I miss Boca, by the way. I miss Boca.
I'm sure you do. I mean, now you're New York now, right?
Yeah, I'm in the Northeast.
Well, I mean, hello. I mean, New York is. We can talk about New York, what's happened to New York another time. But we actually met working on a bunch of very cool brands led by Crockpot. And, I'll never forget this insight working, by the way, on Crockpot, which was the truckers, these guys that ride these semis and these tractor trailers and, all around the US. You think of them as unhealthy and eating fast food and living this life of just sloth, sitting the whole time. And actually, they're one of the biggest purchasers of crockpots. They try and lead a healthy life. And if you think about the magic of the crockpot, it's the perfect thing to dump in the potatoes and carrots and beef, and then at the end of the day have this beautiful, essentially home-cooked meal. And I never forgot that. It was one of the I just never forgot that insight working with you on that. But I'll let you respond to that.
Yeah, it's like, you're driving on I-95 for 8 hours. You might as well make dinner, right? So it was an interesting insight. And that project, it brings back so many cool memories. And in fact, you and I, we worked on, for me, what was my first guerrilla marketing campaign. When we took over Union Station in Chicago and we had 250 slow cookers cooking from 8 in the morning, and when people came back at night, they were able to sample the meals. So for me, that was kind of like a big guerrilla marketing event I was involved in, and you were a part of it. So thank you for the ideas you brought to that project.
I remember that moment really well. But I have to tell you that whilst I saw you, you talk about a fish out of water, and I'm not talking about you living in Boca. There was something, and I could never quite put my finger on it, about you in this like corporate role, in this more conservative role. But it didn't strike me at the time. But now when I see you and what you're doing, I'm not surprised that you ended up where you ended up. But what I didn't know at the time is that it was always in your blood and your DNA, because you were always doing it even before. So it was almost like a pit stop as you were, like, I think, studying. And I think you were studying at the time, or you had studied, or there was something, or you wanted to study again.
I just finished business school. So I just finished my master's.
Business school.
Yeah, and that was my first job straight out of business school. So I was literally fresh from the classroom, so to say. But it was an interesting project to really kind of like get yourself dirty in the corporate world.
I mean, I'm so proud of you in terms of what you've achieved, because we are, fellow Southern Africans, and we stick together and we help one another forever.
Yeah,
forever. And let me tell you something. In addition to all of that, you are, and we'll talk about all of this, you're an author. Yes. Your first Tedx is actually I can never get that word right. It's a language thing, right? Premiering on Saturday. What's your Tedx about?
Yeah, so my Tedx is about, stepping outside of your comfort zone. Basically, I talk about how, your comfort zone will kill you. It's actually dangerous for you to stay in your comfort zone. So I really just talk about the need for everybody to always take what I call conscious risk taking, right? So you consciously do something outside of your comfort zone every single day, because that's how you grow, right? Growth and success really happens outside of your comfort zone. So that's what my Tedx is all about.
You made a very bold statement, right? Which is your comfort zone will kill you. Like, expand a little bit on that for a second, because there are many people that live, at least they would say, comfortably or within a comfort zone. I think maybe what you're implying, if this is what you're implying, is that it's a bit of an illusion, that you think you're safe and in the bubble. It's almost like the Matrix, right? You're in the Matrix and everything seems great, but it really isn't. So what do you mean by your comfort zone will kill you? A little sneak peek why people should go and check out your TEDx.
So I'll give you an example. And this is a very good question. So imagine, right, you set a goal for yourself and you say like, hey, I want to, be healthy or fit or whatever. But every single day, 365 days of the year, you run 2 miles at the same pace, at the same inclination. So nothing changes. So you're doing the same thing every single day. You go, you run 15 minutes, you're done. What actually happens is that your body is not growing. So, there are two directions your body can go, right? Or it's either you're growing or you're not, i.e. you're dying. And that's why it's super important for you to then to consistently take a conscious risk. And what does that mean? Instead of you just running 2 miles a day, maybe the next day you run 3 miles, right? You're challenging yourself a little bit. If you're running on the treadmill, instead of it being flat, you maybe challenge yourself a little bit and it's incline, because then you work out different parts of your body. Because once your body is used to something, then, it's actually regressive, right? It goes back. It's the same thing with, let's say, money, right? Let's take about using money as an example. If you take your $1,000 and you say like, hey, I just want to be comfortable, I'm just going to put it in my checking account and just leave it there, you're actually losing money, because inflation and all these other things, right? What you want to do is you want to take a risk, either put it in the market, invest in real estate or whatever it is, because that's where you have the potential to grow. And the important thing about stepping outside of your comfort zone, it doesn't mean that you have to go climb Mount Everest. Well, it depends who you are, right? But for certain people, it could be as simple as, you know what, this morning I'm just going to take a cold shower. That's stepping outside of your comfort zone. What it does, it enables you to build that resilience muscle, so that now when you are faced by a big decision at work or whatever, you're able to power through it because you've already done a hard thing in the morning. So it's really just reinforcing behavior so that you build these characteristics that enable you to take more and more challenges and for you to achieve your goals. Because typically when you set a goal, right, you're not going to set a goal to say like, hey, I want to run 2 miles, but you can run 5 miles. It's not a goal in a sense, because you've already surpassed that. So whenever you set a goal, it's something that you haven't done. And the only way you can do things that you haven't done is by stepping outside of your comfort zone.
By the way, did you notice a little wardrobe change, a little subtle wardrobe change? I'll give you a clue, my friend.
Oh, nice. Well, we'll get into that. I came prepared, by the way.
Oh, so, no, hey, oh no, please.
Frankie Lampard.
Please tell me you haven't actually shown your Chelsea stuff, which we'll get to, signables, in a moment. Don't worry, I came prepared as well. Kuda is a Chelsea fan. I am a Spurs fan. And we've had a lot of banter and friendly ribbing over years and years and years. Kuda, based on what you were saying, and I love the fact that you actually used a sports analogy for life, because in many respects, what you're talking about is interval training. What you're talking about is mixing it up. What you're saying is I mean, goes back to Einstein, right? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result is the definition of insanity. And what you're saying is you've got to inject that freshness in your life because you will stagnate, you will atrophy. Even going back to the analogy, if you work one muscle group the whole time, you could be working your legs by running all the time, and then you go and do some pull-ups or push-ups, and you pretty much can't move the next day. So it maybe the whole body represents your life, the span of your life, as opposed to staying in one job, as opposed to doing the same thing over and over again. And that comfort zone is almost like I do what I did yesterday as a proxy of what will happen tomorrow, but then COVID hits, and I'll tell you, it's almost a little segue to something that I saw on your website, going back to, and I'm jumping around a bit, but to Nunbelievable. It's the first time that I've seen poverty or hunger linked to COVID. By the end of the year, 12,000 people per day could die from hunger linked to COVID. Obviously, I'm assuming that's a global figure. It has to be. But that is, help me connect the dots here, because that's a big number.
So I'll give you a really good example. So Feeding America at the beginning of the year had data saying that people who struggled with hunger in the US was around 38 million. So this is obviously pre-COVID. And the number now, they just did a recent report, is 54 million because of COVID. So you can just see what 5-6 months of COVID has done to really change the landscape in terms of people who are struggling and people who are now food insecure. Now, when we look into kind of like global numbers, right? So many people have lost their jobs, have been furloughed, or have lost breadwinners because they've passed away. So now there's this a greater need that the world has to fight, and it is just not for governments or nonprofit organizations to do this fight. I think enterprise, right? Businesses like us, Nunbelievable, and others, or some that are even not social missions. It's super important for us to join the fight and make a difference. For me, one of the things that really caught my attention and it sealed the deal to quit, a high-paying corporate job and start working on Unbelievable was the fact that the number that I just shared with you, the 38 million, that's more than the population in Canada. So in America, there are more hungry people than there are people in Canada.
Wow.
Think about it.
Wow.
So, and this is probably one of the wealthiest, if not the wealthiest country in the world. It's happening here in America. But, if it's not happening in your household, sometimes you might be, oblivious to it. You're not aware. So what we're doing with Nunbelievable, and as you saw on our website, is we're not just, solving hunger by, the 1-for-1, one cookie, one meal model, but also through just raising awareness. Pre-COVID, we would bring some of our customers to come volunteer with us because we also want to make a difference by giving our time in connecting with the people who are struggling with hunger and homelessness. You showed the video when on Valentine's Day, we spent the whole afternoon in New York City, loving on these homeless people and feeding them. It's super important for us to really make sure that, it's just not a transactional thing where we just donate money, but we also do that with our time and our attention as well. But anyway, as a brand, that's what we're trying to do. And that's phase 1, which is help combat hunger in America. It's a big issue. We won't be able to feed everybody, but we want to play our part in solving that. But number 2, as the business grows, we want to think about how we can actually get some of these people out of that cycle of poverty and hunger. So we're going to be looking into how do we partner up with organizations that can help people stop that cycle. And I'll share just one story. So as we were volunteering with one of our partner agencies, I got to sit down to talk to one guy who was homeless and obviously was at the soup kitchen so that he could eat. And I just wanted to learn his story. And what he told me was that, he used to work at Wall Street. He was an investment banker. Ivy League, went to one of the top schools. I forget if it was Harvard or Yale, but one of the two. But then he found out that his wife was having an affair, and then picked up a habit, drugs and alcohol, got fired, right? Got into trouble with the police. Now he had a record, got evicted out of his apartment, and in a series of about 7 to 8 months was homeless.
Wow.
It can happen to anyone. So as I'm like listening to his story, like, wow, this guy was on top of the world. He had everything going. And then one thing after the other, he's now sleeping on the sidewalk in a subway. And for me, it was like, wow, we really need to do this, because you never know. It can happen to anybody. Look at COVID, right? You get fired and now you don't have a job. And, if you're in debt or you have bills, and next thing is you're evicted. So anyway, Nunbelievable, we're a mission-based cookie company. We were actually inspired by a group of nuns to do this, hence the name Nunbelievable. And we're just trying to fight hunger in a delicious way.
And notice the nuns are around us. You like the backdrop?
I love the backdrop.
And I also love the branding, by the way. I love the colors. I love the imagery. I love the illustrations. Clearly someone knows a thing or two about marketing. Let me ask you just two kind of origin stories. Well, specifically, I always love Spock, right? You spoke about the nuns and how, and the origins of the company, but what was the connection? What was your connection? What brought you to this moment? Because I kind of feel like, you've done a whole bunch of stuff, Signables is great, especially the fact that your Tottenham Hotspur collection is coming through and you've got your memorabilia. But I kind of feel, Kuda, that this is what you were meant to do. You were put on this planet for, to create this DTC company, or this company with a cause, with a conscious conscience. What was that spark that brought you to this moment? And does it involve the name Brian?
It does, but it actually goes beyond Brian. So in life, you can never connect the dots looking forward, right? You can only connect the dots looking back. So I'll take you back to around 1992. There's a severe drought in Zimbabwe, like severe, like one of the worst in history. And my father was part of the food relief efforts in Zimbabwe. And I was born in a family where I was the only son with 4 sisters. So I had a really close relationship with my dad. But during that drought, I wouldn't get to hang out with him as much, because on weekends, he would be out in the field fighting hunger. And he would come back, after his field trips, and he would tell me stories like, hey, we got to this remote village and we got there right in time. These people hadn't had any food for 2 days and were able to provide them with the food that they need in order to stay alive. So those were like the good, positive stories. Or the sad stories of, we got there a day late and we got to this homestead and a family of 4 had starved to death.
Wow. So
hearing those stories, when you're a kid, it's like, people are dying, people are starving to death. It's real. And for me, it just kind of like, it touched me some way. Like, I like to say that hunger is personal with me, right? Because my father was on the front lines fighting it. I experienced it during the drought. So, when you usually have 3 or 4 meals a day or whatever, now you can only have 1 or 2, if you're lucky. So I experienced hunger when I was living in Zimbabwe. And then fast forward, right? I'm working on the Crockpot Cuisine project you mentioned. So Brian was also brought in by our leadership to help me build that business. And him and I created a really nice bond. And then he left and I stayed with the company to work on other things. And then fast forward, maybe 6-7 years later, he calls me and he goes like, Kuda, you need to come into the city because my office at the time was in Hoboken, and he was like, "Hey, you need to come into the city. You need to listen to this conversation. I think you might be interested in this." And the reason why he had connected those dots was when I was in college, I started a social enterprise called AFR Clothing, where we would sell apparel and we would donate 20% of our revenue, of our profits, to educate children in Africa. So Brian knew that I had a sweet spot of building social entrepreneurial businesses. But him and I had also created a food business as well. So I kind of like had the food experience and also the social mission experience. So I go to the meeting. So when I get to the meeting, he starts telling me a story. And he goes like, there was a guy who was going to San Francisco. And on the plane, he read a story about a group of nuns that were being evicted. I was like, okay, where's this going? And when he got to San Francisco, he was like, hey, I want to go check out this mission. So he actually arrived an hour early into San Francisco, so he had a little bit of time. So he goes there, and indeed, the nuns were a few months behind rent. He cuts a check for them on the spot to help them out, to be caught up and to not be evicted. He calls a couple of his friends. They raise about $1 million fairly quickly. And they had money to get them another place to live. But what they noticed as they were, engaging with the nuns was the nuns were baking cookies, and they were selling the cookies at farmers markets and using the money from the cookie sales not to pay rent, not for their own sustenance, but to support a soup kitchen that fed 400 people a day. So the guy was touched, and he was like, you know what? We need to use startup thinking and create a brand that has a mission, taking inspiration from the nuns, where it's a buy one, give one model. And the guy happens to turn out to be Tony Robbins. So I'm like, what?
Okay.
I'm like, Tony Robbins? Is like, yeah. So Brian basically then said, Tony and his team then reached out to another successful guy, Michael Loeb. And Michael Loeb, a little bit background about him, he used to work for Time magazine. And while he was there, he had this idea, and the leadership there didn't really believe in it. They end up firing him. He goes, starts the idea, and Time ends up buying that business from Michael for about $1 billion, right?
And that wasn't even his biggest business. I mean, then Value Pack, right, is his, and then everything is his.
And then he went, he joined forces with Jay Walker to form Priceline.com that revolutionized travel. So he's also one of the guys behind that. And if you ever watch the show Billions, that big mansion where Axelrod lives in the Hamptons, that's his. So anyway, Tony and his team reach out to Michael, and they go like, hey, can we join forces and create this company? Because Tony had the vision and he had the seed capital, and he was looking for a partner. And what Michael Loeb has, he has a company called Loeb Enterprises, which invests in so many different companies. It's a venture collective, and they have a different business model than a VC, where a VC usually cuts a check and says, okay, go figure it out. Michael actually has more than 100 people on staff. So in addition to giving you the capital, they bring you in, and you get to leverage all of these subject matter experts as you're launching your product. So that was a model that Tony and his team really found attractive, and made Michael Loeb a really good partner for the project. So anyway, Brian was already working with Michael on so many projects. So when this idea for Nunbelievable came about, Brian was like, hey, I know the guy who can really help us put this together. So Brian and myself became the co-founders of Nunbelievable, and Tony and his investment team as well as Loeb then became the investors in Nunbelievable, and we went to market. So
it's an unbelievable story. It's an unbelievable story, and it actually shows you that everything in your life was pointing you. I mean, Kuda, let me ask you a question, just, because we've been drinking and all. I want to know, you can never connect the dots moving forward, only moving backwards. Is that a Kuda quote, or is that somebody else's quote? I'm just curious, because it's a brilliant quote. Oh, my God.
To be honest, I haven't heard anybody say it, but I wouldn't be surprised if someone has said it before. But it was an epiphany that I actually had when I was talking to someone. I was like, oh, wow, you can never connect things looking forward. You can only connect things when you're looking back.
It's like a Yogi Berrism. Well, so we've now given birth to the idea of a Kuda quote. We need more Kuda quotes. No, but it just shows you how everything, listen, Kuda, do you know how many people there are in this world? They're given those opportunities. They have those Brian phone calls. They get 100 of those Brian phone calls. You need to get into New York City now. And you know what happens? They don't get on that stupid path train.
Yep.
They don't make the trip. They've got unread emails. They don't see these opportunities, and they don't recognize that these almost fluke or random opportunities are actually just a connection of all the dots saying everything in your life is coming together for this moment to change the world, to change your life. And I mean, it's just an absolutely, beautiful story. Normally an origin story is like, hey, so why do you join the company? You're like, well, a headhunter called me, and like this was just, this was fate. Tom is saying, by the way, I've been ignoring everyone watching, that it's a Kierkegaard quote. So there you go. I don't know, Tom. I mean, in my opinion, it's a Kuda quote, but whatever, we'll go with Kierkegaard, because he's not here to defend himself. And by the way, I've been ignoring everyone. Nicola Rosendorf, who is South African, she said so inspiring, and I love the fact that, of course, I don't even know why my mother's watching, because right now it's midnight in South Africa. But I love the fact that you actually said thanks for watching to her during, like, in the background. So that means a lot to me. Michelle Stearns is here. Michelle was very much connected to Frank, who wrote that. Michelle is also ex-South African. So you can see we are all connected as well. But it's a beautiful story. And I actually have to ask you a very quick question before we go into the Spear, your book, because, not satisfied with all the entrepreneurial stuff and Chelsea, you had to write a damn book as well. But again, why do you think every company on this planet doesn't operate with a conscious capitalism or conscious conscience? Why is every business model not just based on this idea of buy product and we donate, or you donate, or we make the world better? Why is it just not a gold standard across every business?
To be honest, I don't know, and I wish it was that way. But I think with movements like conscious capitalism and the rise of conscious consumerism, things are going to start shifting in that direction. And conscious consumerism is really the whole thesis around customers are actually willing to pay a slight premium for brands that have a purpose over brands that don't, meaning that the whole pricing equation is taken out of the picture. Because if people say, like, hey, if this cookie costs $1 without a mission, and this cookie costs $1.50 with the mission, I would rather spend $1.50 on this cookie because I know that my dollar is going to have more impact. And we're actually seeing a lot of customers going that route. So I think over time, it's going to evolve into that direction. But I think it really starts with the entrepreneur, right? The visionary. What's your DNA? What's your purpose? What's your reason for creating this? So hopefully over time, brands like Nunbelievable can set an example for other up and coming entrepreneurs, so that it's part of their DNA as they're building companies, that they stand for something. And it doesn't necessarily mean like feed more people. There's so many other movements out there that you can push. So hopefully that will be the business of the future. And I remain optimistic, with that lens and framework in mind.
All right. So on that basis, I'm going to ask you to name that quote, which is a big common staple on Corona TV, and this is one that kind of follows up on the question I asked, which is, here's your quote: "The longest journey that people must take is the 18 inches between their heads and their hearts."
Off the cuff, this sounds like something Tony would say. So, I don't know who said it, but just hearing the tone, I wouldn't be surprised if it's Tony Robbins.
Well, I should change it, and hold on. This is how I can change it, because I would like to get the attention of Tony Robbins. So I'll be like, "Yep, that was a Tony Robbins original quote. So Tony, call me." No, but in reality, it wasn't actually. It was John Mackey, who actually the Whole Foods founder and the man who wrote Conscious Capitalism. But I love this, Kuda, because it's like this idea of, head and heart, right? Making money, doing good, changing the world. It's such a short distance, and yet it's like a lifetime to achieve.
Yeah, that is true. But we've made a lot of progress, right? Think about in year 2000, 20 years ago, how many mission-based companies were out there, right? B Corp didn't even exist. So I think we should also, pat ourselves on the back as mankind on the progress that we've made in a very short period of time. But the idea would be to see more of that accelerated growth in the next 20 years.
Yeah, it's a great point. So rather than say, why are more people not doing it, we actually have to look again, connect the dots, looking backwards versus this idea of figuring out what those connections look like moving forward. So well said. Tom Morris says, "We are the world." So he's feeling very kumbaya at the moment, and Haiti says goosebumps. So I think we, and by we I mean you, are striking a nerve. So in the minutes that we have left, before we go to the after show and drink some more, not satisfied with Nunbelievable, with changing the world, you decide that you want to be an author as well. So I want to give you an opportunity to talk about the spear method, which, I guess it might have been the assegai method, but that would have been a much more difficult acronym. But you decide to write a book. Why do you decide to write a book? And what was it about the spear method that kind of motivated you to become an author?
So this book, what motivated me to write it was a couple of things. The full title for the spear method is The Spear Method: 5 Simple Steps to Balanced Success and Fulfillment. And the reason why I have that subtitle, right? 5 Simple Steps to Balance Success and Fulfillment, is because people are always either just chasing success and they forget about them being fulfilled. So even when I was in corporate America, right, I was just chasing success. But the thing that makes me fulfilled is also making a difference. So that's why Nunbelievable to me became that perfect balance for that. And then the SPEAR method, as you can see, it's an acronym that stands for seek your why, and then P is planning, execute, achieve, and repeat. So that's the SPEAR. And one of the reasons that made me write the book was that in 2015, I was on the West Coast in Florida, in Sarasota, and at like around 3 o'clock in the morning, I get a call. And I saw that it was an international number. And usually, my sister Miriam, who's 2 years older than me, she has butt dialed me so many times. So I was like, she's probably butt dialing me. Let me just hang up. Let me not even bother. But I was like, just pick up. So I pick up, and there's a silence, and I actually think like, oh, okay, she actually did butt dial me, but she actually didn't. She's crying. So I'm like, okay, now I'm awake. I'm like, what's going on? And she goes like, Memory, my eldest sister, just passed away. And for me, it was like, what? what had happened was there was this stray dog that was in her neighborhood, and she was taking a walk with her 18-month-old baby, toddler, and the dog just came and bit my sister, and it went on and bite 23 other people. And the guy who owned the dog went and bribed a vet, and the vet claimed that the dog was okay, it didn't have any rabies, but indeed the dog had rabies. So when the vet came to my sister's house, my sister was like, "Oh, okay, we'll just dress it as a wound," and didn't go and get the rabies injection because this vet had come and vouched that the dog was good. But with rabies, if you're not injected in 24 hours, it's pretty much done. So 2 days later, she was showing symptoms, and then she passed away. So it really happened so fast. So when I was at her memorial, because I missed a funeral because they had to bury her very quickly because she had died of rabies, I was just thinking to myself, I was like, was she fulfilled? Was she really happy? Right? And just started asking myself all these different questions. And I was like, you know what? As a matter of fact, let me go on this journey in understanding how do you actually attain fulfillment? And at the same time, how do you achieve success? So the book really outlines my findings as I interviewed a lot of successful people, from self-made millionaires, professional athletes, and so forth and so forth, on their journey or how they've been able to remain fulfilled, because fulfillment is internal, right? And also achieve success. And the SPEAR method really outlines that. So let's start with number one, seek your why, or if you want to say, seek your purpose. If you do not know your life's purpose, regardless of what you do, you'll always be empty because you're not moving in your purpose. You're not following your why. So for example, in my case, my purpose is to build businesses and use the profits to make a difference. So if I'm not moving in that direction, I can be a billionaire, but I'll be a miserable billionaire because I gain fulfillment when I change other people's lives. So I had to go on my own quest. And in the book, in part one, I actually talk about how you can find your purpose, how you can find your why to really do that. But then once you find out your purpose, if you don't come up with a plan as to, okay, how am I going to do it? It's better off not to even go on the journey on finding out your purpose, right? So then I talk about every flight needs a flight plan. So for your life, you also need a plan. And there's the whole myth that you just create a plan once and that's it. I actually demystify that. A plan is dynamic. You always need to be constantly using the learnings that you get to tweak your plan and continuously going into the direction towards your why. And then once you have your plan, you have to execute. So if you come up with a plan to say like, hey, I want to do XYZ, but never actually do it, you won't achieve whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. And then E obviously is achieve. And it could be as simple as 1%, 2%, or 100% of achievement. But whatever you achieve, you want to repeat that process where you're constantly going back, in this case, in executing, executing and achieve, because you already seeked your purpose and you now have your plan, and then you can move forward. But there might be instances where, in life, things change and perspective changes, that maybe you might feel like your why or your purpose has changed. So that's why you always have to have that feedback loop. And that's the SPEAR method.
And I think, to me, the key to the whole acronym and the whole methodology is the R, is the repeat, is the fact that our life is just filled with pulsing and iterations and incarnations and reincarnations, and that is your life. And I think what you bring to the table is you've had a tough life and you've gone through tremendous adversity and some tragedy, Kuda. I have to tell you, like, my thought as I'm listening to you is it was a very almost surreal experience, which was, how come I didn't know any of this about him when we worked together? And it just shows you, like, everything wrong with the business world, and maybe everything wrong with me, that that like when you sit down and you take the time to like get to know someone, like we have over the last 50 minutes or so, this is real. This is what counts. This is what matters. And there's no doubt. That's why I said my emotion for you was just, I was so proud, because, and you're not done yet, and you haven't finished yet. And I think, I fully believe, tell Michael I said hello, by the way. I fully believe that you will take Nunbelievable to where it needs to go to, whether that is exit, whether that is public, whether it's whatever. But you will never, sacrifice or check your integrity and your morals at the door. I have to tell you. Look, Elias Parra just said hi.
Elias. And
I have to tell you, in addition, your sister is definitely watching, because I see there is a love button from Miriam Biza Maringai. Did I pronounce it correctly? So,
well, close for a South African, close.
Hello to Miriam. I also changed my cap back to not pile on the pain for you. But Kuda, look, we're going to go next door to the Zoom after show. But I'm going to give you the final word. And for those of you that want to find out more about the SPEAR method, it's not just a word, it's not just an acronym, but it really is based on real life, and real life stories. Find out more about how you can do something Nunbelievable. And in fact, if you use the code FALL20, you can get 20% off. Kuda, you can follow Kuda, on Instagram at kudabiza.com. I mean at Kuda Biza. You cannot follow him on Twitter because Kuda, you're just not on Twitter. I have to say though, as I try and wrap up and everything, just a little bit of fun. I found Joseph Kuda Biza. I'm assuming this is you because of the Chelsea comment. Am I right?
No, it's actually not me.
What?
No. And what's interesting is that he has both of our names, Joseph and Kuda.
Well, he is. So I saw Joseph Kuda Biza, but then when I saw that Diego Costa was the signing of the summer, I'm like, it has to be you, because no one would be that deluded to think that about Diego Costa. But anyway, Kuda, final word from you, and then we'll move on over to the Zoom after show.
Yeah, so the final word for me is a remix. And there's a quote that goes by the two most important days in life is the day you're born and the day you find out why. I actually then extend on it and I say the three most important days in life is the day you're born, the day you find out why, and each day you act on your why. Because if you know your why but you don't act on it, so every single day is an opportunity where you can act on your why. And I'm doing that through Nunbelievable, through, the SPEAR method and other things. And I just want to encourage people to do the same, because tomorrow is never guaranteed. And the other thing is that sometimes you might think that things are impossible or you can't achieve it. Remember, we're talking about comfort zones, right? And impossible is an illusion of your comfort zone. And you can ask, the guy who ran the 4-minute mile, right? For everybody, it was like, oh, you cannot do it. You cannot do it. It was just an illusion of your comfort zone. He stepped outside of his comfort zone. He acted on his why every single day, and he did it. And the same is true for all of us. We have the potential to do great things. And if we act, we will achieve great things. And that is the final word of the show. Signed, mic drop, Kuda Biza signing out.
Actually, the mic drop is coming from Chuck Norris.
You are Chuck Norris approved.
Thank you for watching Corona TV with your host, multiple author and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. Corona TV is the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing. The after show on Zoom starts right now at bit.ly/Corona TV After Show. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show at CoronaTV.show. And if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, text CoronaTV to 66866 or visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.